Hello, and welcome again to the Psych Tech at Work podcast. As always, I am your host, Dr. Charles Handler, coming to you live here, or recorded actually, from the UNIVAC studios here in beautiful New Orleans, Louisiana, with another all-star guest, somebody I've known for a really long time, Madeline Laurano. Madeline is the founder of Aptitude Research. They provide really good, really awesome, high-quality research on everything in the HR tech space with a specialty in talent acquisition. And Madeline and I have known each other, at least 20 years. I've seen her grow and really respect the work she does. I'm always excited for her new reports, and great to have her on the show today where we share wisdom, but mostly I listen to her wisdom about trends in talent acquisition technology, trends in assessment. Yes, she knows assessment really well. So without further ado, let's welcome all-star guest, Madeline Laurano. All right, welcome, Madeline. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Charles. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm trying to remember. I've known you for a really long time, although we don't talk a whole ton. And I think it's all the way back, like really early on ERE days. Did you write for ERE or
I did. Yes,
Yeah.
I was there as a research director. I did ATS reports and some other reports. So probably like 2004, 2005.
Yeah, boy, it seems like a long time ago. So that was really instrumental in me getting started. I remember I started writing for them in like 2001, and there was zero other outlets for any recruiting news at all, right? It was
Right.
the only place, and good quality information. Imagine the difference now, right? Like I got so many connections and so
So
much
much information.
visibility and clients from that, and now it's like so impossible to get you have to really work to get your message through to anyone these days, right?
I know. It's interesting because during that time period, there were not a lot of people that were voices in the space either. We could name them. It was like John Sumser, Lou Adler, not many people.
John Sullivan, Kevin
John
Wheeler.
Sullivan, Master Burnett.
Yeah.
There were not a lot of people that were the voices. Like a lot of people had opinions and were engaged in the community, but there weren't a lot of trusted voices. And it was nice because you really knew through that community who you could trust and who was an authority on, even within specific areas within TA. So it was a special time. It really was.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I haven't really written. It's been a while. I know I could always do it, but I just haven't. I have so much going on, as I'm sure you do. And then, of course, you're writing all kinds of really great research these days. I try myself. So, and you are in Boston, right?
I'm in Boston, yes. And it's finally summer here, so it's beautiful and warm and all the things.
Yep. It's hot here. Talking about the weather is always a universal human thing, right? Especially if you're experiencing it. And there's you don't have much to talk about, although we do. You can always talk about the weather because it's something that we relate to. What's your favorite part of living in Boston?
Well, I don't love the cold, so I am not a huge fan of living here, although my kids they love it here and their school's here and their friends are here and their sports are here. So that's great. But I love Boston in the summer and I love the city. It's very manageable, it's walkable, it's historic. There's just so much to do and see. And I've lived here for so long, it's so special to me.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with it. Well, cool. So, and tell us, I introduced you, but tell the audience a little bit about what you're up to, what you do, all the good stuff. I will say Aptitude Research, you have a good knowledge of assessment stuff. Over the years, all the content you've put out, I'm always impressed because it's not always that easy for people to pick up kind of complicated subject matter sometimes.
It is. Well, I appreciate that. That's high praise coming from you. And we definitely don't put out as much or the in-depth content that you do around the assessment space, but it's definitely been an area I've focused on for a long time. We've had lots of conversations around it. But for, anyone that isn't familiar with Aptitude or wants to know a little bit more about me or what the company is, I'm an analyst. So I've been doing research and advisory on HR technology for over 20 years, which is a long time to be an analyst, and have worked for some large analyst firms. I worked for Josh Bersin and then started Aptitude 10 years ago. And we do, again, research and advisory on HR tech. And TA tech is the area that I love to focus on, although it's sort of blending in with talent management and all these other areas. But TA tech is definitely what I'm passionate about. And the assessment space is an area that I've loved covering because it's been so interesting. It's been an area where companies have been very interested in it at during certain periods and then not at other times. And it doesn't always make sense or follow what's going on in the economy, but it's definitely feels like it's hot again. And that's kind of exciting to see. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I do. I mean, I think it's changed. I've started to, so in some sense, any piece of information that you use to make a prediction about hiring someone is an assessment. It always has been. But nowadays, as you see it productized and, advertised, predictive hiring, match scores, and, recommendations, all that stuff have now been embedded outside of the realm of what I do, just into these platforms that you see that are running a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of AI behind that. So if you look at it that way, I think it's very hot. If you think about the traditional stuff, I think it's sometimes you think, yeah, there's a steady business in it across the globe. As you know, I track the market for assessments, and right now I think I'm up to 400 vendors. I mean, I've expanded my view, but I can't even keep up with actually writing and grading them all or anything like that. There's too many, and I find out about more every day. So I feel the barrier has been lowered. And I think there's just no way there's enough people interested in assessments to keep all of these companies going,
Right.
So who knows? It's definitely harder and harder. And that's all I can say. I don't know. There's been a lot of consolidation over the years, So, and we'll talk a lot about the skills-based hiring. And, I reached out to you because of that skills-based hiring report, because it was so simpatico with, how I think about things. But I'm a big believer in context. I like to get some context going here. So the context is, well, we live in some crazy times. All right. That's always going to be the case. But let's, zoom into just, I would say, HR tech and TA tech. I mean, we talked about it 20 years ago. My last job in San Fran, I was working for Monster, selling employment branding solutions in Silicon Valley. Big step outside of what I normally did with assessments, right? It really helped me get a big picture view of how people hire. It's not just a test or some tests. That's not even close. It's a result of a lot of stuff. But I guess back then, ATSs, job boards and ATSs, that was your talent acquisition tech. ATSs didn't seem very evolved. I mean, nobody ever likes their ATS. I don't know if your surveys, do you ever survey people and say, do you like your ATS? Because none of my clients have ever said they like their ATS.
Yeah, they don't like the ATS, and that's the bread and butter, right? That's the whole tech stack for a lot of companies is you start with the
Right.
ATS, you don't like it, and then what does the ATS not do? And then how do we fill in the gaps with what
Yeah.
other, providers can fill the gap?
So you have such great experience. Why do people dislike their ATSs so much? Like, what's the overall function is critical, especially with all the overload of applicants. So what's the pain point? What's the genesis of all that hatred?
Yeah, and companies need an ATS, right? Like it's not going away. You need a workflow, you need a compliance system, and that's not changing. I think the number one issue, I'll get into some of the gaps, but the number one issue I see with the ATS is the user experience.
Yeah.
It's incredibly difficult to use. It's not simple. If you think about where recruiters spend their time, it's mostly in LinkedIn, and that's
Yeah.
what they're used to using. And the ATS is a beast that does not support their workflow. What do recruiters do in their day and how do they spend their time? And the ATS traditionally hasn't been designed to fit within that recruiter workflow. So the user experience is just poor. And then if you think about the gaps within the ATS, it doesn't do a great job with search. And this is just an ongoing issue and topic. It doesn't do a great job with scheduling. It doesn't do, even what you were talking about earlier with the matching is kind of now being an assessment category or considered maybe for some companies as an assessment. ATS does not do a great job with matching either. So there's a lot of gaps within the ATS, and companies that even are looking broader at talent acquisition and saying, we want deeper insights, like talent intelligence is a big topic. The ATS doesn't do that. They need to kind of invest in a provider that does support that, or, skills-based hiring is what we're going to talk about. The ATS is just not designed to do that. It's not designed to be a CRM. A lot of them have CRM products,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of gaps in the ATS. And if a company's spending 1 million plus on it, they're
Yep.
going to be frustrated if it doesn't do that.
Yeah. So my thought, you said recruiters don't feel like, or the ATS isn't designed to help recruiters with their workflow. Well, then who the hell is it designed for? Because recruiters are the ones that use it. My experience, I've integrated assessments with pretty much every big ATS. And once you get the assessment piece in there, it's not always handled super well, some better than others, quite honestly. One of the things that, to your point of functionalities, I have multiple clients say, well, if someone comes through and applies for a job, we'd love to be able to compare them to other jobs in our company. That can't be done for most ATSs. You just can't do that. And that's such a basic thought, So I feel like that part's pretty interesting.
It's a huge miss.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other big thing too, Charles, is like the high volume stuff. Like that's so hot right now, is like how can we support high volume hiring? And the traditional ATS has never been good at high volume hiring. I mean, even thinking back to
Right.
the ERE ATS reports we would do, like
Yeah.
one or two could actually even support high volume. It hasn't changed much.
Yeah. And that's where assessments really are used the most. Executive, kind of at the edges. Executive, although the volume is low, obviously, you don't even need an ATS a lot of times. And then, the volume stuff, which is really important. You got to have screening. You got to have some teeth to your screening, not your evergreen, rec questions. Are you available to work at night? That kind of stuff. It's interesting. So do you think, I'm just like, I got you here so I can ask you all kind of great questions about stuff that I don't know and would, I think our audience would love to know too. So you got bigger systems and you go to HR Tech and there's all these systems that are sitting on top of sourcing, screening, management, communications. So, those are not sold as ATSs. Those are sold as platforms. Do you feel like a company could just use one of those and just punt their ATS? I mean, do they truly have the ability to replace the ATS in the whole thing or not?
It's starting to happen. It's interesting because if I were, going to build a technology company, an HR tech or a TA tech, I would not want to be an ATS company. That would be the last thing on my list. And you see these companies that have now, offer something bigger, and whether it's a sourcing platform or it's a talent intelligence platform, like Eightfold just launched an ATS, Phenom's launching an ATS. Like we're seeing these providers that weren't ATS providers, probably never wanted to be that, saying it naturally makes sense for us to be a workflow as well. And I mean, Gem launched an ATS, Eightfold, Phenom, there's more too that I'm just not thinking off the top of my head, but it's now a market where companies are getting into, and it flips the whole buying like behavior, because you're, instead of saying, okay, I need my system that I'm not going to like and I have to have in place, and it's just the bread and butter of what my TA tech stack is, and then I'll buy all the cool stuff around it. It says, well, maybe we can switch that behavior and instead say, let's buy something really cool that can drive a lot of value for what we want to build in transformation and TA transformation. And the ATS can be part of that. So it's a completely different model for buying an ATS. And some companies are doing it. And Paradox is the other one. So Paradox, obviously, communication, conversational AI platform that is done very successful on the high volume side for companies saying, bye-bye ATS.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's alternatives now, which there might not have been. And it's started to go to more of a modular thing for these platforms for a while, but not these newer ones. I think it's your things. I don't want to sit here and name a bunch of names, but it's, we've got this talent management piece, or we've got these other pieces, and now we're gonna put a recruiting module on there.
Yeah.
And again, from a consumer side, it's not normally what I deal with, how people adopt these things, but I mean, it only makes sense if you've already got your foot in a company, and especially with ATSs, if everybody hates theirs, and you have developed something that's easier to. I think the newer, I could be wrong, the newer a system is it's rolled out, the more user friendly it is, because there's no legacy of crap that they have to develop through or don't have time to develop, et cetera. Or hey, we've got all these companies held hostage basically because I've been involved in the ATS changeover too a bunch of times. It's not a simple, easy thing to do. It takes a really, really long time and a lot of resources.
Right.
And you hope you got it right. So that it's an essential piece, right? If the workflow and all of these pieces, we'll talk about the AI piece of it. We couldn't, even think about getting out of this without, you're not getting out of talking about AI here. There's no way.
No, got to talk about AI. There's no way not to.
But let's talk about the most recent skills-based hiring. So I got a ton of my own thoughts, and we'll probably be pretty aligned. But you did the research, right? And you wrote up some really good stuff. And so, walking away, if you had to kind of summarize that, what you found, what your thoughts are from that piece of work, what would you tell people about the present state of skills-based hiring?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we've done skills-based reports before. So this one was a little bit different. And when I first thought about, do we do another just skills-based report this year, I was a little hesitant because I felt like the conversation was a little tired or companies weren't interested in it anymore. I was wrong. I think people were very interested in this topic. But what surprised me is companies are fatigued with the conversations. We found 1 in 2 companies are facing fatigue with the skills conversation. That was not surprising. I expected to see something like that. That's what I've been hearing and talking to companies. And then when looking at how companies are using skills and where they get stuck with skills is they're just focused on doing a strategy or almost doing like old competency models and saying, okay, let's spend 3 to 5 years and like what we used to see, in 2000, 2005, where companies would look at their competency models, spend years reevaluating them. It's very static. It doesn't really provide a lot of value because it becomes outdated so quickly. And they were getting stuck on that. They didn't have the resources for that. It's a tremendous amount of work and it's manual work. And companies weren't really kind of piecing together the technology with the strategy, with the change management that needed to happen. So the skills piece was just sort of stuck, where companies are tired of it. They feel like it's too much work. They don't really know how to get unstuck. And what we found is that for a lot of companies, the way that they're defining skills, at least within talent acquisition or within hiring, is just inferring skills off a resume, which is, absolutely got value. I mean, I believe in it myself. I don't think anyone should be manually going through every single resume and looking for candidates. There's huge value there. And it does provide, a playing field where everyone has an opportunity to be seen. But the deeper work and the work in, that really is going to move the needle on a skills-based approach is going to be in validating skills as well. And that is the missing piece that I think a lot of companies, one, aren't thinking about. And I didn't realize that until we did the study, but also aren't, looking at the full picture. It's, again, this just, we're going to check a box with skills and then we're going to move forward. And then we're not going to have any ROI or see any value or really even go through a transformation. And that, I think, was eye-opening. And I think when we did the report, you never really know how a topic is going to land or not when you do some of these studies. This one was tremendously popular. And we got a lot of, feedback from it where companies were saying, yes, this is what I'm feeling, or yes, we're not thinking about validating skills, or we're not even thinking about the assessment piece as being a part of this major conversation on a skills-based approach.
Yeah, I would agree. So, I think it starts with what's a skill. If everybody can't really agree on that, and you mentioned, a big part of my last 30 years has been studying jobs and breaking them down into what it takes to do a job. And that's really fun. I've got to see some really interesting jobs, and I've stocked shelves at a Walmart. I've done some pretty tough things where you're in there and you're understanding what it is about people that they need to do the job. There's always a little bit of wiggle room when you're trying to define, these things: knowledge, skills, abilities. There's competencies. You can kind of craft those, but I wrote my notes here, right? So you're talking about earlier days as cement. It's like there's all this density to these competency models. It takes a lot of work and they don't really flex and evolve. And then on the other side, you got air. I mean, you've just got these labels that are floating around, and those, to me, they don't do anybody really any service. But the platforms we talked about, again, not naming names, not saying they're bad, but I got a chance for a startup I'm working with. We API'd to several of these companies, and I got to see on the back end, what are the skills coming in? We're putting in jobs and seeing what skill profiles came back, and they weren't across the board. This isn't just one. They weren't organized. Uh, there were a lot of irrelevant ones that really just didn't even make sense. Like, I'm trying to remember, but there's some, or just very vague, like using computers, or something like that. So you can't really do much with that. And then and the source of it is resumes and job descriptions, which everybody, they hate HCSs. You also hate resumes and job descriptions. There's all these necessary evils. What can you and I invent that there's
I
a big
know.
white
I
space in the
know.
market? But that part of it is really hard for me, especially being someone who understands that any hiring decision, no matter what you're using, has to be job related for not only legal reasons, but just for
Yeah.
practicality. I want to hire you on your shoe size, because that has no relevance to the job. So I feel like that where we are now with that stuff is really more in that realm. And the assessment part is hard. So I'm part of this really cool. I mean, I attend the meetings, and I've had Megan Raftery from this organization on my podcast. It's called the Skills Validation Network, or the Skill Validation Network. And it's part of the Chamber of Commerce's, like, I think they're associated with the T3 initiative, which is really cool. And I've had someone from there on here too. And I just attended one the other day, and they had all these ways they're validating skills in the educational space. And there's all kind of stuff, peer ratings and educator ratings and demonstrated. I got a whole chart. And if you look at the subset of those that happen in the workplace for skills validation, it's a tiny little paradigm that we can't really change. So to me, to make it work, I think we need to connect with the education
Yeah.
space and clearly understand what skills are and track those skills and collect data on those skills. It's a tall order.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, it's a very
Order.
tall order.
Yeah, it's a great parallel. I mean, I think, yeah, like even in our survey, what we found is companies, like a large percentage, were using reference checking to
Yeah.
validate skills. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
not, we know that's
It,
not
it
real.
can. I think it depends on the reference check, but yeah, at least there, someone is
Yeah.
saying, yeah, they have the skill or not. Whereas a resume, anybody can put anything on there, and so it gets difficult. But it's such a so the concept behind it, hiring people only on things that are related to the job and not things even education or background or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I think that's a really laudable goal. So we're starting with a pretty good goal here,
Yeah.
but it's not translating. And then I could talk about this a lot. So at SIOP, our organizational site conference, I went to a presentation about skills-based hiring programs at some giant companies: Walmart, Johnson & Johnson, and Verizon. The programs they've developed are incredible. I mean, they have multiple years in this, all starting with what is our skill lexicon. They use AI in some of this talent intelligence stuff. They integrate it and use the best of it. And they've developed, they've got metrics, they've got assessments, they have very rigorous setup. And that to me is the blueprint. But that takes an enterprise company with a staff of really expensive, smart people working around the clock for multiple years, right? So there's no super easy, solution. I don't think.
No. But I think the nice thing about where we're at now versus maybe where we were at 10 years ago, if this was a big conversation, is technology and AI can help accelerate the skills journey for companies in a way that was not the case 10, 15 years ago. And for companies that feel that they do need to do what Walmart and J&J and others did, which is put in 5 years of work before they get started, it's not the case anymore. Like, you can work, like, you don't need to have the fully baked strategy that you've worked on for 5 years before you make the investment in AI or technology. You can do both at the same time. And that's a lot of the providers out there that, are focused on skills-based approaches are helping companies get started in a much faster way than they would be able to do on their own. And I think the other challenge that I see is that there's just so many providers talking about skills-based approach. Like, you have startups entering the market. Some of them don't have any either credibility or even real AI that's supporting this approach at all. And it makes it very confusing for companies, but I think they've become a little bit skeptical. I don't blame them. I'm skeptical myself when I see some of these startups.
Yeah.
about, is this like, what am I buying? And is this really going to be able to deliver the outcomes that I want?
Yeah. I mean, hoovering keywords off resumes has been going on ever since. I mean, I remember even in 2001, just the whole idea like you're watermarking all these,
Yeah.
keywords behind your resume, and like people are still doing
Jobbox, remember Jobbox, like
Yeah, I
2000?
worked
Yeah.
for Jobbox. They were
Hmm.
one of my clients.
Yeah.
I worked for a lot of job boards post TMP or Monster. I did I did so this was really cool. My first big project when I started my on my own was with Career Builder. And what we did there was they had a matching system where basically they had to sync it up with the paper because they're owned by the Tribune, right? So they still had, remember those paper
That's
one ads?
crazy. I
Yeah,
know.
right. So um, but we ended up basically, I had to do this. Imagine AI can do this in 5 minutes. We manually went through pretty much every job in the world, built a taxonomy, associated skills with those jobs and experience levels with those jobs, et cetera, for the back end of Career Builder. And then they pushed, or they were gonna, because it never actually saw the light of day, but they were going to push that to their, okay, you're uploading a resume, you're going to fill in all these fields, and it's going to help match you based on skills related to jobs. But it was all manual. It was all manual. And then they got bought or something happened, and I can't remember, they were like, no, we're not going to do this anymore. I mean, I got a good 6-8 months of work out of it, but it was a unique and novel idea, I think, at the time that now
Yeah.
we're doing just kind of automatically. But again, the manual heavy lifting, you had to hire a person like me to go through and build these taxonomies,
Yeah.
which AI can do really well because I work with a couple startups where I'm helping them build taxonomies. Once you get the basic blueprint, the AI works really well. Like it knows what skills go with what
It
jobs,
does.
for sure.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And saves so much time and actually does a
Yeah.
good job. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So what do you see? What are you thinking when you go? HR Tech's coming up in a couple of months. We'll get to see every year. I kind of look for the differences, but in general, you got your ear to the ground. What are the real trends in what's happening? What do you
Yeah.
truly see continuing to shape this space, skills or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, skills is still a big topic, and I think companies are still very interested in, understanding more and looking at providers and those providers that really truly do offer a skills-based approach or help companies with that. There's a lot of value there, even beyond just that transformation. So that's a big topic. Everything's the agentic AI stuff right now. So everyone's building out and moving towards some type of agentic AI solution. And that's really been exciting for me as an analyst, but also at the same time, I think it's a little confusing right now because there's, for companies that are looking at it, it's like if you're we just did a CRM report, so I'm talking about CRM, but if you're going to buy a CRM and you want to replace the CRM that you're using and you're not happy with, you want to buy a new one, you're going to go through that process. That's what you want to see. And that's what you want to buy at the end of the day. But now we're introducing new things and new ideas, and agentic AI is part of that. The vendors aren't really sure how to price it yet. So we don't really know how that's going to be priced. We don't really know if that's part of the CRM or this is a separate product. There's generative AI capabilities and co-pilots that are part of the CRM, but the agentic piece is separate. Then there's huge providers like, Workday or even ServiceNow that are becoming agentic AI as a platform providers. And do providers provide their own, or do they just integrate with these big systems and work in that ecosystem? So the agentic AI stuff is exciting, but at the same time, I think we don't know. There's a lot of questions that are not answered right now. And that I don't think will be answered in 2 months, but I do think it's going to be eye-opening when we go to HR Tech.
Yeah, I mean the agentic thing for me too is I feel like there's a little bit of I don't want to say mislabeling, but
For sure.
you can string together a bunch of different models and have them work with one another. But true agency is, go book me this flight or go do this or that. And I think OpenAI is about to come out with one of the things that just takes over your computer and goes and does things for you, right? So it's a lot more task completion driven. I'm sure there's a lot of the same stuff, but nonetheless, you're talking about giving one command to something and having a bunch of different things in the background,
Yeah.
kind of support you. I think so. And you think about that in terms of hiring. I saw something Perplexity has launched these, I guess, templates for things. And like, this is a process you can go through. And they have kind of these templates you can use. And one of them was, find me an engineer who does so-and-so with these qualifications. And essentially it came back with a bunch of names, a bunch of statistics, and a bunch of recommendations of who to find. These were, I think the criteria were engineers who know X, Y, or Z, who've only worked at top tech companies who are in the Bay Area. And I use Perplexity. I have another business and I look up my clients. If someone contacts me, I always look them up.
Yeah.
Perplexity will tell you, and I played around with it for someone who had asked me. I said, I made up something. I was like, find me the top 5, I think it was like nuclear engineers who specialize in fusion something. I just kind of made it up and it sounded real. And I got 5 people with links that were not hallucinations. So, I mean, if you're a recruiter, especially niche,
Yeah.
this stuff's doing it. So I'm leading us to how soon until the agent just brings you someone and executes the hire, or do you think, there's always going to be at least a human at the end? So that's where we're headed for sure.
I think we're not there yet. I mean, I think there's still going to be a human involved. And I think that companies still want a human to be involved. I mean, that's, it's definitely feels like the more ethical approach. So there's everything's semi-autonomous now with the agentic stuff, but I agree 100%. There's mislabeling of it. And I think the other challenge companies have to face too, especially within TA, is you have to figure out what the tasks are. Like, what is the work that needs to get done? Once you've identified what the work that needs to get done is, who's going to do that work? Is it going to be recruiters? Is it going to be agents? But an agent, a true agentic AI model is one that takes on the work completely. So unless you've identified what those tasks are and how you want those tasks to be completed, the agentic conversation is not relevant.
Yeah, you could say, get me a latte, and it's got to actually make the latte. Get it to you, right? Instead of just calling your order in the Starbucks. Yeah. I mean, that's also interesting, right? Is that there's a limit. I guess that it could order one online for you and have somebody deliver it.
So somebody else get it. Yeah.
It would be that way. There's inevitably, going to be, some pieces. I think sourcing is definitely one of them, like I just named, that you could do now ad hoc. And that's the other thing is, if I'm a recruiter, I can do a lot of stuff ad hoc outside of the system. If I really want to create something that does, what I need, you don't even need like the consumer facing chat window on any one of these platforms can certainly do a lot for you.
Yeah.
That part is changing things too. So a lot of change. I mean, in that whole span that we've been talking about from 2000 up until 3 years ago, I mean, things change. There's fads people talk about, but recruiting in Second Life, remember that? Like,
whoa, Second Life, I know.
Bullshit on that immediately.
Yeah.
No way. This is
IBM was using it for onboarding with like little people jumping out the window. It's crazy.
Yeah. I tried it one time and it was really hard to maneuver, but then there's people from other places like making fun of my clothes. I don't know how to get clothes in this stupid thing. It was really pretty lame, I think.
Yeah, it's stupid.
And so there's stuff like that you go through. And there was an AI wave probably like in 2018, everybody started talking about it, but it's just machine learning and predictive algorithms. So we're in a whole new.
It was predictive, right?
I don't know about you. I mean, I'm on every day, all day, pretty for everything I do. And I'm continually blown away. I mean, just continually have to step back and go, this is effing incredible.
It's crazy
that we have this in our hands.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, fast forward, we're talking 20 years back. I always ask people this, fast forward to 20 years from now, hopefully we're retired. We're not worrying about it, I guess, but
Yeah.
or at least I'm 57. You're much younger than that, I'm sure, but I hope I am. But retired anyway in 20 years.
It'd be
But
nice if I was too. It'd be nice.
yeah, you
Yeah.
can do it. You can do it. So, what are we seeing then? Is that too far off to even speculate?
Yeah. I mean, I do. I mean, I think it's hard because this AI, you know, wave that we've seen in the past 3 years has changed everything. Like we never saw
Yeah.
this coming, and
Yeah.
in the way that it's happened too. So it's hard to think what's next. I mean, I do think we're going to see a shakeup in how TA teams and functions are structured, and we're seeing it already. But I think I think it's going to be so major. If we like do a podcast again in 20 years, we'll look back and say, remember when there were all these roles on a team? Like we don't need any of those anymore. I think, this is a little bit boring, but I do think that workforce planning, which has just been ignored by most companies, or it's been very ad hoc, like during times of layoffs, will become something that's either more mainstream or something that's like part of this whole AI conversation. Like, how can we figure out the work, what we were talking about, the work that needs to get done, or who's going to do that work, and not plan for it in a way that aligns with, how companies function and budget and everything else. So, I think it's inevitable that that's going to be more of a topic in the future. But I think the TA function is going to be completely different than what it is today. I think the tech landscape is going to be completely different. I don't know if I see companies having as crazy of a tech stack as they have now. Like what we see now, which is, here's my ATS, or I'm using Workday or Oracle or whatever I'm using, and now I'm going to buy 25 other things to try to do things that will not do, is not sustainable in the long run. So I think that whole model's got to change as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll have digital coworkers who are essentially real personas that help us do things. I mean, I know that. I don't know to what extent or how that'll work. And organizations, I think, will be structured very differently. I mean, if you think about it this way, there weren't really iPhones 20 years ago.
Right.
They weren't. I mean, I had this T-Mobile Sidekick, which had a QWERTY board and it had its own apps. It was like really cool. That was where, I was able to get my email on that thing and my phone. I never really had a BlackBerry or anything. I guess those would do the same thing. But at any rate, so 20 years ago, we didn't even really have an iPhone. And so if you think about it from that perspective and how far we've come in 20 years, all bets are off. I was watching, I don't know, the Age Before Dinosaurs or something with my kid the other day, and you're 350 million years ago, right? I mean, and then humans have only been a fraction of that. So if you just really zoom out, it's like it's a blip what we're doing, but we're coming along so fast. It's mind-boggling. So I have no clue either. I mean, in my discipline of IO psychology,
I know.
It's like the stuff that I slaved away doing early in my career, I can do at my fingertips now with no time, but that frees me up to do other stuff, right? So do I think we'll have less people in my profession? I don't know. Do you think that in 20 years you'll be able to say, just type in, hey, give me a report on, ATSs and put these sections in it and whatever, and you think like AI can just generate the stuff that you're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are using it that way already. I think, it doesn't necessarily have the expertise or the knowledge behind it. So you're going to that's great for a vendor report. I don't see that as an analyst report, but so this summer I hired 3 associates. So it's kind of a different model that I've had before. And they've got different backgrounds, like, data analysts and, financial analysts, not the traditional HR or research associates. And the skill sets are very different, but the way, questions that they asked me during the interview process were around how do we use AI within this to do our job? And they've been amazing. They're so much better than I was when I started out at this. They're able to access information that I was never able to access. They're able to find, and the thing that's been interesting to see, like even with AI being part of how this younger generation is being educated and also how they're going to enter the workforce, is what I've seen is it hasn't stifled their curiosity or their opinions either. Like they've got opinions on things. And I think AI is just helping to support that. So I don't know. I'm hopeful.
Yeah. And I mean, I think about the work I'm doing. I haven't done kind of a published because I'm not necessarily, I do a lot of things, right? But the analyst report stuff I like doing, but it just takes a lot of time when you're not really getting paid for it directly. So the last one I did at the end of, during COVID, I had plenty of time. So I did a ton of research and put out a huge report, but I can't really do that again. So we're taking my database and just building a little chat bot with Replit,
Yep.
really easy. Doing that, yeah, it can pull some information about every vendor or use my information. But the artistry of me being able to look at any vendor's website and pretty much figure out what they're doing and are they legit, because I've been doing this so long, you can't replicate that. There's no way.
No.
So there's hope for us, in that regard. Yeah. But the information is there, and information is power, and I feel like it's pretty quality information that you get out of these things. So, that's moving us forward. I believe it's crazy. And so, and we'll start winding down here. But one of the skills, if you talk about skills, I think being able to work effectively with AI is a humongous job skill at this point. And I'm waiting. Like, I certainly believe there should be assessments for that. I've designed some in my head. I just haven't really built them, but you're going to see more and more of that. And I think even in a hands-on way. Yeah. So it's, instead of don't use AI to cheat in the job application process, it's here's a task, here's a model or, a chatbot or whatever, solve it and, do your thing with this information and show us that you have the skills.
Right. Show us how that you can use it. And I think it's flipping the conversation completely. I mean, when this all started, it was the fear of this is cheating. We can't trust this. This is not a skill set. And now we're saying embracing it and saying it's actually a skill set you need to develop. I think that's absolutely where companies will all be at shortly.
It's a zero-sum game trying to just keep people from doing this, just like any kind of cheating and, proctoring on it only gets you so far. And I feel like, but it has really created that issue, the mass apply issue, right? Of like, you're getting friggin' 18 billion resumes because you can hit one button. So there's no easy solutions out there, but people like yourself can keep providing great quality information. So what do you have? What do we have to look forward to from your growing research house?
We've got some studies coming up on the healthcare industry and some high volume stuff, but the one that I'm most excited about is a CRM report. So like similar to the large assessment study you do, although not as in depth, but it's still pretty meaty, is we do a CRM index report. So it's a big deep dive into the CRM providers. So there's 14 providers in this year's report, and it profiles all the providers. There's a lot of analysis, trends. There's, it's not pay for play in any way. No one buys a profile. No one can be sponsoring the report in any way. It's a ton of work. And it's a ton of work. And it's, as you know, and it's going to publish at the beginning of August. So I'm very excited for that.
Yeah. People may not understand how much work it actually is. And then it becomes obsolete in like a year. So if your business is producing these things, that's a good thing because you've got to produce new ones and keep up with it. Good deal. Well, HR Tech, I will leave you here with what do you think is going to be the most surprising? I mean, it's coming up, right? What do you think is going to be the most surprising thing you walk away with from that?
I think it's a good question. I mean, I think I already know what the trends are that we're going to hear. I think I know that, but I've often been wrong. So we'll see about that. I think we're going to see some major acquisitions either leading up to HR Tech or announced at HR Tech. And my guess is going to be some of the larger platform providers acquiring some of these smaller providers. And I'll say small, like not really even that small in TA Tech. But I think we thought that was coming at the beginning of this year and it hasn't. And I think we're going to see it at HR Tech.
Yeah. I'm I can't even really, when I ask you that question, which was unplanned, I'm like, I don't even know if I have an answer. I feel like it's, how different will it be? I don't know. I think the surprise for me is a lot of times seeing how low the barrier. I mean, you've got all the big fancy booths, but you go in the startup thing, there's a lot and a lot of people there, and just how easy the barriers to entry now, especially with vibe coding and all that, is you can stand up a company, a platform, a thing really quickly. Getting people to buy it's a whole nother thing, but it's really easy to do that, and I don't think it's been as easy in the past. Good deal. So as we play out here, how can people follow you and make sure they get the latest quality stuff you're doing?
Oh, well, thanks for asking that. So our website's aptituderesearch.com, and all the reports are free, so anyone can download any research there. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and my email is pretty visible on the site too. So I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. Busy and travel a lot, but I'm there.
Yeah,
I'm here.
I hear you. Good. Well, thanks so much for joining us. It's great to catch up with you, and I'll see you in September.
Thanks, Charles. Appreciate it.